Hello everyone, today we've got Stephen Noakes and I'm going to interview him with a few questions that you've asked. But before we get into the questions from the team, Stephen, I'd like to ask you a few questions about yourself.
Sure, yeah.
So the first one is, what makes you tick?
Some of the guys in the team have probably heard me give the answer to this question before, but I've had the opportunity of kind of working across a number of organisations. And actually it's my time in Pepsi that probably resonates most in terms of the model they used to use for leadership development. And they had a very simple model, so you didn't have to kind of remember too many things. But it talked about setting the agenda, taking others with you, and doing things in the right way. And for me, that is the kind of the key thing that I kind of get out of bed for. It's the opportunity to kind of set strategy. I love kind of strategic issues and kind of getting close to that, kind of working through complex problems and kind of setting forward a plan. But I equally enjoy the implementing and actually kind of working with the team to kind of drive to conclusion. And the doing things in the right way, the values, is incredibly important. So that's really what kind of fundamentally makes me tick.
Great. What are you most passionate about outside of work?
So I've got two daughters, Claire and Emma, 25 and 23. They're never off the payroll completely. So for those of you with young kids kind of looking forward to the age when they've kind of finished university, don't kind of get too ahead of yourself. But I love spending kind of time with them and Natalie, my wife. And then from a sport perspective, probably about 15 years ago I learned how to surf. So when I do kind of get the opportunity, we kind of live in Berkshire, so there's not a lot of surfing around there, but when I do kind of get the opportunity to get to the coast, either in the UK or overseas, then I love getting out on a board. But during the week, cycling, so mountain biking for me at the weekend and out on the road bike during the week as well.
Great. What made you come to Lloyd's and trade in the glamour of fizzy drinks and mobile phones for banking?
Yeah. I mean, I had 7 years in both organisations, and actually the last role I had in Vodafone was as Chief Marketing Officer in the UK. And in that role I used to kind of talk about the wealth of information that we had about our customers, terabytes of data, and it was like who people were calling, where they were calling them from, how long they were calling. But that information is dwarfed by the intelligence and understanding we have around our customers in financial services. But the reality is, still today, we really don't leverage it to best advantage. We've got a really good understanding in terms of what the best thing to talk about to our customers would be. But it's really personalising that service and making sure for each individual customer they're getting real relevance in the communication and real value add from us as their financial service provider. So I still have that as the ultimate vision, but we've still got a long way to go. We've made some really good progress collectively, certainly in the time that I've been in the business, but still a great opportunity for us.
That's actually a great segue into the first question from the team. And this first question is from the marketing value stream. And they want to know, as we look into 2020, how are we making sure that we communicate with our customers in a relevant and personalized way?
Yeah. So in the marketing value stream, one of the kind of the key activities that we're working on through this year, and it will roll into next year as well, is around the decisioning engine. So there's something called RTIM. We have lots of acronyms, but I mean essentially it's allowing for kind of decisioning. And clearly there's a myriad of comms that we're looking to kind of provide out to our customers. This provides us the opportunity to kind of coordinate that to best advantage. There's a second piece which kind of extends beyond that, however. And it is about driving probably a more customer-focused culture out through the organisation. And that's both for us, I think we've still got opportunities for that in transformation. I think we're pretty customer-focused, but I think we can still do more. But it's also around that customer focus in the business divisions as well, in the product areas. The work that we're doing we may touch on segmentation later on, but that's actually taking a deliberate customer focus rather than a product focus. Historically, the way that we and the rest of financial services have operated is you kind of think product first rather than specifically around customer. And as I said, there's a lot more that we still need to do. So there's some capability, but there's some kind of broader kind of questions around competence that we also need to drive.
Yes, my next question is from the customer segmentation value stream, and it does build upon your answer there. So in the segmentation value stream, they're working towards a more personalized approach, and how do you think we can embed this way of thinking across the group?
Yeah, I mean, it's and to be honest, actually, the journey that we're on is not different from the journey that many other service organisations have been on in the past. Actually, at the time that I was at Vodafone, my product directors, which were kind of managing part of the P&L, had a double hat accountability, and were also accountable for a segment. And where we got to at Vodafone was actually the annual financial plan was built around customer segments. Investment went behind customer segments rather than around the product initiatives. Now, as I said, the way that the product silos have operated in financial services has been there for a while, and it's going to take a good chunk of time to kind of shift the dynamic in the organisation. But that is an important part of what we need to do. So, the technology is a key part of it, but this kind of cultural shift, which kind of understands we need to think about the way we engage a customer as a single group organisation rather than a series of individual product organisations, is definitely a journey that we need to kind of continue to push.
So next question is from the Transforming Branches team. As we sit currently, are we where you expected us to be as a function? And where would you like us to be at the end of this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's as you think about our transformation journey in the round, there are really kind of two dimensions that you need to consider. There's the transforming the what, and a lot of that is around the technology that we're using to kind of drive better customer experiences, either in terms of digitizing what we're doing or enabling colleagues to have advantage technology which enables better quality conversations. So that's a key component. And on that lens, I would actually say we're pretty much where I would have thought. We've had some difficult journeys. You'll be kind of close to one in terms of the adoption of public cloud, an important one for us to embrace. But by and large, within a couple of months, we're broadly, I think, where I would have expected us to be. The tougher journey is actually transforming the how, and it's really that cultural shift. Because for us to be successful in terms of agile working, we need to kind of get each and every team, each and every lab comfortable with making decisions at a local level. And that's going to require senior leadership, myself included, feeling comfortable empowering those teams to make those decisions. But it's also going to require the teams themselves feeling comfortable taking that accountability. And that's going to be a long journey. That is probably going to take us longer than GSR3 because we are fighting against the way that this organisation has worked culturally and certainly post-financial crisis. So one that will be with us for a while.
Okay, next question, a tough one from consumer onboarding. How can we achieve agile when our investment process is tied to the old way of planning?
Yeah, a very good question, and I recognise voicing the frustration which the onboarding and all of the teams will have faced. I mean, the reason that we're moving into agile is to drive better flow management. I mean, agile has its kind of heritage in lean manufacturing industry. So it is, how can you kind of remove things from the roadmap, which means that the teams can kind of deliver to their best advantage. What we've got in our current process is a situation where we have to chop and change far too many times. We don't have contingency in terms of the way that we set investment budgets, and inevitably where some programs end up by requiring more funds, not because the project's been badly managed, but because scope from regulation increases or whatever the dynamic might be, the complexity of the change is greater than we originally envisaged. You need that extra cash, and then the kind of question is, where does it come from? So we need to kind of find a way to manage our investment budgets which give us some of that inbuilt contingency. And in the conversations that we're heading into around 2020 planning, there's a shared desire, both within transformation and out with transformation in the business divisions, to find that construct. I'm not saying that we've alighted on that yet, but there's a real appetite to ensure that that's part and parcel of the 2020 plans.
Thank you. Next question from Motor Finance Value Stream. On viewing my value stream structure and having some knowledge of other value stream structures, there appear to be a lot of roles band D and above. This would indicate lack of career progression opportunities for the reduced number of lower banded colleagues. Will there be a strategy communicated and guidance around how we balance this?
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, and this is a great question. So if I kind of go back to the work that was underway actually when I kind of first joined the team in probably May of last year, we were doing all of the design work with BCG, value stream by value stream, thinking about, right, what is the kind of the optimal organization design that we need? There were a number of considerations which were kind of part and parcel of that. One of which was, do we have the opportunity for effective career paths as you move from one role to another? Now the reality is that, since the time that those ODs were struck, there are a number of changes which each of the respective value streams have had to contend with. And as a consequence, if you do the step back now, you'll probably find there are some areas where the career paths are less obvious. I think there are two things on that. The first one is, as we do the retrospective, we need to kind of give thought to the way we continue to evolve the structure within group transformation. So that's one. But the second thing is, there are broader career paths which are available for each of our colleagues. The reality is that we've driven a location strategy which in the main means that we're co-located with the business that we're supporting. So the opportunity for colleagues to actually step from a role in transformation, have an experience within the business division and then move back into transformation is definitely something that all of our team should be thinking about, and line managers should be supported.
Next question from Consumer Servicing. With changes to the car scheme and staff mortgages, could you provide more clarity on the reasons for these changes and what you expect bonus and reward and performance rating processes to look like going forward?
Yeah, another great question. So, for both the kind of the car scheme and on the staff mortgage scheme, the drivers for those changes were partly down to what we were seeing in terms of demand and partly also reflecting what we're seeing in the broader marketplace. So if I start with the staff mortgage scheme, and one actually with, given my experience actually on the mortgage side that I've been quite close to over a period of time, the reality is that the way that the rates work and the way that tax is operated, the benefits of that staff scheme for many colleagues had diminished over time. Because by the time we worked through the benefit in kind, the benefit that colleagues were realising versus the very attractive mortgage rates which are available in the market, for many colleagues really didn't make sense. So we were seeing demand reduce. We then also have to kind of take account of whether we are having colleague offers which are akin to the types of offers that we provide to customers. We're kind of an organisation which has got a lot of focus, and you've got to be careful about the media attention that attaches. So, the reason for that change is primarily driven by the fact that, as I said, kind of demand reduced, but you're also kind of mindful of, the way that a journalist or the external market would look at it. So that's on staff mortgage scheme. In terms of cars, clearly kind of the focus in terms of car fleets more broadly, the impact on the environment is also increasing. And the move there essentially is to kind of move from a situation where cars are kind of provided in terms of individual grades versus a business need position. But for individuals who've kind of got those car allowances, they've got the opportunity of consolidating that into base pay, and that base pay then kind of drives higher flex benefits and drives kind of bonus payments on a go-forward basis. So, that's the kind of the driver behind the changes on the car scheme and the treatment for colleagues through that journey. In terms of the final question, which is what does all of this mean for pay and bonus? I mean, clearly in terms of the adoption of Your Best, we're radically changing the way that we do performance management. And hopefully all of the colleagues listening to that are aware of that in terms of the kind of the conversations which they're having with their individual line managers. But as part of this, the pots which are available for the annual pay and bonus award are exactly the same. So there is no change as you kind of move from one year to another because we're doing things in a different way. What it will drive, however, is greater discretion for individual line managers to agree what is the right pay and bonus award for individual colleagues, rather than a process which is felt more probably done to, rather than something which is more of a product of a relationship which has kind of worked over a 12-month period. So I recognise there are still going to be questions around that, and the next drop of the Your Best training will educate and inform everyone in terms of what that's going to look like as we kind of get closer towards the end of the year conversations. But I should reassure everyone it's the same pots for pay and bonus.
Next question from the shared services team. Since you started in your role in group transformation last year, what's the one thing you're most proud of? And what's the one thing you'd ask us to concentrate on the most in terms of improving and becoming more successful in retail and community banking transformation?
Yeah, I think it'd be, I could try and alight on one single deliverable that the kind of team has done, but the reality is across each of the value streams and shared services included, there are some great deliverables that you'd kind of step back and feel really proud of. But I think for me, it's probably more around the relationships that we've struck with the supporting business divisions and elsewhere within transformation. You know, we've got a key group value in terms of working together as one team, and for me that's incredibly important in terms of ultimate success. And at the time that group transformation was set up, clearly there was a lot of nervousness within the business divisions in terms of, would you take my investment money and run? But you know, we get a very strong response back from the business divisions about the quality of the day-to-day working relationships, and I think that's real credit to the values that exist through the team. I think keeping on the values focus in terms of response to the question on what more can we do differently, it's continuing to help us collectively push on the keeping it simple, breaking down bureaucracy, embracing the behavioural experiments. I know there are a number of behavioural champions which we've got within the team, and certainly within shared services. Chris was telling me the other day, I think we've got 20 in his area, but they're a great way for us collectively to just try and shift the dial, and in some areas on a relatively kind of small piece, but what you're trying to do is change habits and behaviours, and we all know from New Year's resolutions they're easily said but often quite tough to shift. So I think it's kind of continuing the resolve against helping us shift that culture.
Question from the mortgage value stream. Now that the majority of colleagues have moved to their new roles, when do you envisage that all the planned benefits from group transformation will be realised, and what areas are currently meeting your expectations?
Yeah. So this really kind of probably goes back to that point I touched on earlier on in terms of flow management. So the advantage of Agile is, you know, you have a prioritised list of things that the team are working against. You provide the working environment, which means that colleagues can operate at their best. You empower decision making, and you avoid them getting distracted from lots of incoming requests. That is the ideal position. So, you know, I think we've actually now in a situation where we've set up a lot of the foundation capability in that regard. Co-location in many instances is now delivered. We've got the multidisciplinary teams established, but the thing we haven't yet done is provide the air cover to stop the teams day to day being distracted by lots of incoming requests. Some of those are from ourselves, some of those are from our business sponsors, and I think we need to collectively do a better job of informing and educating our business sponsors of the inefficiency which some of that creates, and keeping us able to protect our teams in terms of delivering at their most efficient best.
Thanks very much, Stephen, for your time today and for answering those questions.
Thank you, Martin. And for those of you who posed the questions, really appreciate you asking them and giving me the opportunity to respond in this open format. Thank you.